Hey loves, today I'm going to be speaking on growing up in America as a first generation American and also just what I learned living in the Middle East and sort of comparing it to my experience growing up in America. So my parents are not from here in America, obviously. My dad is from Iran and my mom is from Italy. So they, both journeyed their ways to America and did their best without really an instruction manual to build a life here in America. And about 4 years ago, I randomly ended up in Egypt. I genuinely had a journey quest over there and ended up getting stuck there during COVID. And to my surprise, I ended up staying. So I definitely learned a lot about what it meant to live in Eastern cultures in the Middle East and be closer to certain moralities and social structures from what I was raised in, specifically in my family home and my relatives and so forth. So, obviously, I'm not full Iranian, I'm half Iranian, but still, I grew up really around my grandma and my aunt and my uncles because my Italian grandparents didn't live here, so we didn't have as much influence in the Italian side, I feel like, but there still was influence for sure. And so, wow, where to begin? I have my coffee ready, and this is probably going to be my longest video yet, I'm assuming. So, where to begin? Obviously, when you have parents that were not born and raised in America, you are literally just thrown into this American lifestyle with no instruction manual. So, and of course, not everybody had the proper guidance to go through growing up in America. I definitely acknowledge that. However, I think just not having any parental guidance on any of the social norms or the social structures in America is definitely just all around a different experience. So imagine your parents didn't live the American dream. They weren't raised in high school. They didn't go to prom. They didn't do all of that kind of stuff. They didn't have maybe the same kind of social cliques that they have here in America. So you're literally just thrown in and you kind of look different than everybody else. Your name is far different than anybody else's. And you probably eat different foods than everybody else. So then you're kind of just okay, good luck, figure it out. So that was essentially my childhood. And I always felt super different than everybody around me, but I didn't know why. I wasn't given that proper explanation. I wasn't given that awareness by my family. I just I don't know. I just always knew I felt different. I didn't fit in. I was definitely a loner in a lot of ways. I didn't have really big groups of girlfriends or anything like this. I was a lone wolf essentially. I had maybe my close best friend, and I never really had super Americanized best friends either. They were all different cultures and backgrounds. So that was also really interesting, looking back on that and realizing that. And when I say instruction manual, I know that we are not all given this gift of a super detailed guide of how to navigate reality. I really just mean when your parents weren't raised in the same social norms with the same social etiquettes and the same type of religious backgrounds or just way of living, it's just you don't have any kind of foresight on what it's like to go to American high school or anything in that sense. You're just literally figuring it out on your own for the first time. They didn't go and get their first jobs in America. How are they gonna walk me through that and talk me through that to deal with the general public as a teenager or whatever? It's just they didn't have the same kind of social norms, basically. So that's what I'm saying. Most, American families, they at least have this kind of like sense of idea of like what it is like to go to an American school. They can help you, guide you, talk you through it in certain ways. And I honestly just did not get that whatsoever. By 15, I was actually living on my own. I dealt with a lot as a teenager, and I was fully financially supporting myself by the time I was like 14 and 15 years old. So you can imagine that like even less structure of guidance or whatever, learning how to attune to American culture was even available for me. So I pretty much, I always say like I did raise myself through my teenage years, and obviously like early adolescence and stuff like that. I did raise myself. I think the most unfortunate aspect of all of this is that we were definitely brainwashed as children through the generational trauma of the way that the US has presented the Middle East. And so because I was fed all of this information as a child regarding the wars, regarding 9/11, I didn't even know what to make of like my type of people, like what to make of like Middle Eastern people. Like you're literally designed and fed through the American school system and the news and all of this stuff what to conceptualize the Middle East as, which I mean, I didn't understand how much it impacted me until like I showed up to the Middle East with all of these types of views of like, oh, this and this, and then this is the culture, and this is the structure, and these are the social norms, because of literally the essential like brainwashing fear tactics that derive just from what it was like to grow up in America, which I think is the saddest part, because I think because of these fear tactics, I completely didn't resonate with that side of my life experience, that side of literally my DNA. I just shut it off. I shut off all the encoding. I shut off all the probably ancestral wisdom without even realizing it, brushing it off, pushing it aside, living my best California girl life, because that is all I knew pretty much. So definitely the biggest and should have been the most obvious for me is just the way that American culture navigates dating and courting and relationships. And clearly it is nowhere to be found in my ancestry to date the American way. Like, I think maybe my parents dated the American way, but even before that, like none of my grandparents did at all. So literally there was just no DNA makeup in me to even fathom understanding American dating. But this is how I was raised. I was raised in California, which I have now come to terms that it is one of the most, I guess, like sexually open kind of cultures, even more than other parts of America. It is just really sexually fluid, pretty much. Like, I feel like everyone's kind of bi or gay in California. Not everyone, but like so many people. And it's also just literally, at least where I was like from, it was like normal to hook up with all your friends. And I never understood it. That was the part. Like, I never got it. I was like so confused that like people would just like go out on one date and then just like hook up. I didn't understand. This is not to shame people. This is just stating that this was never in my family makeup. It was never in my like DNA or ancestry to like understand how to do that emotionally and spiritually. It didn't resonate. But then also the other extreme of like, don't do that until marriage also didn't resonate, because I'm like a California girl. Ha ha ha. What do you mean? Like, what kind of loser would not hook up? What kind of loser would like wait until marriage? Like, I feel like that is just like the typical adolescent American mentality. Especially because our pop culture is so sexualized. It's crazy. So between the influence of pop culture, the influence of social norms in the schools in America, where you clearly are made fun of if you are a virgin, or you're made fun of if you don't drink or smoke. And I'm not saying this is like the end all be all of how every American high school is. I don't know what the heck they're like, but I'm just saying, as like growing up in California, the general consensus is like you drink, you smoke, and you fuck. Like, that's at least from what I saw. I don't know what other schools are like. I know there's way more conservative areas of America. Like, actually, where I am now, it is definitely more conservative. However, I think all in all in American culture, if somebody sees that you don't drink alcohol or you don't like smoke weed or whatever, they're going to be like, "Oh, what happened to you? Why don't you drink?" Which is like literally so not normal in other parts of the world. Like in the Middle East, like it's actually completely suggested that you shouldn't drink. Like in Islam, but also even people that aren't Muslim, like they don't have to be Muslim, but they just know that like drinking is not an inherent part of reality. It's not a necessity, and it's like not really a social norm at all. So finally experiencing somewhere that this is not the norm. People don't like gather and just like get completely obliterated and blasted. Mind you, I definitely acknowledge that so far from everywhere I have traveled to, there is nowhere like California. I'm not saying other cultures don't party. 100% they do. I personally haven't witnessed anywhere as crazy with partying than California. So to finally go and live somewhere and experience the masses that don't drink, the masses that don't smoke weed, like it's very interesting. If you think about it, the majority of pop culture came from California. I'm speaking on like the early 2000s pop culture. Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, like the influences on younger women, like Britney Spears, they were in California. The Hills, Laguna Beach, like the things that we were watching when we were little, these were all taking place in California. So you can imagine that, like, I really do believe this had a genuine impact on being raised in Southern California. Like, you literally, like, these are your idols, right? He's like, they have pop culture idols. It's not surrounded specifically about your sex appeal. It's just not. And they also have like a lot deeper guidance of religion. And so that brings me to kind of another topic, the view of religion in California, at least growing up there, was you were suppressed if you were religious. And that's really the guise of religion that I was exposed to. It was just like religion equals suppression. Religion equals suppression. I didn't know anything about religion. So when I came to the Middle East, this was my ideology of like, oh, these people are suppressed. Like, which sounds so fucked up now that I'm like looking back on it. I definitely acknowledge that because I was just so like closed-minded, and I really was like genuinely a closed-minded California girl. I had this whole journey of like thinking I was an alcoholic and an addict and all of this stuff. But really, I was just in the wrong location because going around people that don't drink, wow, all of a sudden I also don't drink. It wasn't like I had to have some crazy life experience to like make me stop drinking. No, I just placed myself in a different environment with people with different values and different morals, and then wow, all of a sudden like that placed God on the pedestal rather than like pop culture and like money or whatever, that God is the pedestal. And then I'm healed, right? I'm not an addict anymore. Like, please tell me how that works because I don't understand. So it seems like from what I gathered in Egypt specifically, the way that they're raised on their like pop culture and stuff isn't sex appeal being on the forefront of anything. It was actually humor. So there is just this really good sense of silliness and humor within their culture. Like they always have these like really specific, basically inside Egyptian jokes, kind of the way that like I guess like the millennials or the Gen X has their like lingo of jokes, but like it goes even way deeper in Egypt, I think. Like everything is just like silly and funny there. And I do appreciate that, even though I don't freaking understand most of the jokes because I don't speak Egyptian Arabic. But that was the sense where like they were kind of raised off of like being silly and funny. And we in California at least were raised on putting our sex appeal at the forefront of everything. And yeah, I'm not saying one is right and one isn't right. That's not what I'm saying because everybody's life experiences is different, but I do think that I don't feel that I was taught a lot about wholesomeness throughout those experiences. Like I learned to find my own wholesome energy and admit that through everything. Learn really deeply in the Middle East was about femininity. So I really just went into the Middle East thinking that women there are oppressed because they're covered and they're controlled by religion and blah blah blah. Just like the standard, like really closed-minded American thinking. And mind you, anytime there is an extreme in anything, it becomes evil, it becomes dark. So any extreme religious practices I don't agree with. And actually most people are not living in extreme religious like practices. It's probably like the 1% of people. So I'm not speaking on extreme religious practices. I'm saying the collective consciousness as a whole. So over there in the Middle East, they really do value the divine feminine. I think they hold the divine feminine codes probably more than anywhere on the planet. I don't know. Because I used to think that religion was all about control and just controlling the masses, right? Actually, religion is there to protect you and to guide you in life. So I used to really believe that because the women weren't promoted to use their sex appeal as the forefront of their personality, that they must be suppressed. But actually, covering up and being modest is for your own safety and it's for your own sense of deep care for yourself. The way that you're not encouraged to directly go to a man's house or hug up with him, it's not out of suppression, it's out of protection. Who would have known? Not California people, that's for sure. Now, mind you, I do acknowledge that there are different levels of social sexuality. So some people have evolved into being spiritually inclined, having many partnerships, many sexual partnerships, many sexual flings and experiences like that. It doesn't impact them on a soul level because that is just their spiritual makeup. But that is not the majority. I don't believe it's the majority, men or women. I don't think that all of us are so open sexually. I do acknowledge some of us are. I don't think everybody is. I think that the majority of us were meant to be in divine union with monogamy, and a lot of negative, harmful experiences came from the normal dating culture in California. I think that it's not normal to like immediately go to a man's house or let him come over to yours. I think those are like harmful practices. I think they're unsafe. I don't really understand the way that it's implemented through fear. I don't necessarily agree with that aspect of religion in general. I don't really get like the whole you're gonna go to hell thing. That's like, I haven't studied it enough. I don't really get it from the outside perspective. I think we were sold a lot of lies growing up as women in America. That's all. I think we missed out on a lot of beautiful aspects of femininity because of the movies we watched and the shows we grew up on and whatever. And maybe our parents not being fully informed of like the new ways that men and women or girls and boys like pursue each other and things like this. I think that we were just structured a lot differently than the Middle East. And I'm not saying there's a perfect way and there's like the perfect way, there's the right way, there's the wrong way. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying that they value women in like a different way. And it's like they will see you as the most precious pearl to like protect. And saying as a collective, there isn't like these social norms or moral norms of like the way, like it's like chivalry is kind of dead in America. I'm not saying every man isn't chivalrous, I'm saying the general public. So I would say in the Middle East, holding women to like a high protective standard is definitely there. So there is really a lot to be said about all the things that I've learned in living in the Middle East. I feel like I'm scratching the surface here, and it is hard to put a lot of things into words because it's not necessarily everyone's specific action, but it's mostly about this energy, collective consciousness that I was able to feel and live out versus coming to America. I dealt with specific harassments in the Middle East that I probably haven't dealt to that extreme in America. However, I also experienced ultimate princess treatment that I have not necessarily experienced in America. So I think that the main takeaways is the aspects of femininity, the way that the Middle East holds really, really deep core values on protecting femininity and letting women be women and letting men be men. I forgot to add one really important part is that America is definitely an individualistic nation. We are out here protecting ourselves, we're out here serving ourselves, and it is like not super normal to gather in community, especially soberly. In the Middle East and even a lot of European countries, you will see people scattered all over the sidewalks, having a smoke, having a tea, just chatting, taking hours for their dinners, because they're just connecting and they're being together. They're always in togetherness. In America, it's just a different way of life. People are, just like I said, we're raised to be individualistic here. And I do think in the Middle East, they still hold such deep values of having the family unit connected, having large groups of friends, having just like times with friends, but in like a really wholesome way. And yeah, I wouldn't say that is the average norm because even where I am now, it is full of bars and there's just not even a lot of places for people to gather. After 5 p.m., like pretty much everywhere is closed and people are just going to bars. And I'm not anti-drinking. I really am not. I'm just saying the fact that we're raised to think this is how we connect is like the missing gap in our humanity and our communal like understanding of how to connect basically. And so again, that is really one of the biggest main takeaways is like a communal society versus like an individualistic society, a society that encourages women to perform their personality based off of their sex appeal versus women who are encouraged to have the forefront of their personality be like their connection to God and how beautiful their heart is and like so forth, and a collection of women being raised to being raised to learn how to protect themselves versus like in America you're raised to literally freaking smile and say please and thank you and not really stand up for yourself. in the Middle East. I actually missed certain aspects of this, but I do see like, I get it. Like, women are not raised to freaking smile at strangers over there. It's actually like not a social norm at all to like smile. And I used to get like really sad about this because I literally just live with a smile on my face, like no matter what. I don't have resting bitch face, I have resting smiling face, and that is just always how I've been. So you can imagine this attracted a lot of unwanted attention because they weren't used to women smiling at them, and I'm just like a naturally smiley person. I just am. So that was another big takeaway. I think women are like just taught to value their privacy a lot more and not be like such an open book and leave a lot of air of mystery to them, which, but at the same time, if I were to come up to a woman in the Middle East, they like would just love to get to know me, and they just like want to be like sweet and kind to me. Add some cute like fun little girly things that I noticed in the Middle East is that, for example, on the trains and the metros there is a women section cart. So I thought that was beautiful. Like, if you just don't want to be alone on a freaking public transit with a man, you don't have to be. So I definitely appreciated that. And I remember seeing in Abu Dhabi, like literally at the front of the mall parking, this whole pink section just for women to park at. So they like don't have to walk across the parking structures and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is so feminine and cute and girly. And I just loved that. There was women only gyms that was like so popular to have. Like, it wasn't like something that was rare. In all of the gyms, there was separate pools, there was separate saunas, separate steam rooms, obviously, because like, why would you want to be half naked in a tiny cubicle with a sweating man? I don't know why in American culture that's even normal. Like, it's so weird to me. And obviously in every gym there was a separate women's section, so like you didn't have to be bending over and doing your squats in front of a bunch of men if you didn't want to. So as I was saying, like, you are just like raised to like honor your privacy in a far different way than in America. There's all women salons where there's no men allowed. There's all women haircut places. Not normal for women to live alone there. They're always going to live with their families until they like basically have a relationship with their husbands. That is just the social norm. To implement these as like rules, I could see how they're constricting, but to have them as social norms where you're not like made fun of for being like 25 or 26 and still living with your family, I think is a beautiful thing. Because like, why is it that in America we're told to move out by 18 years old and being sent off before our brains are even developed properly? Like, I always see people under the age of 25 as like still practically like teenagers. Like, if your frontal lobe isn't developed, like, I'm not saying don't talk to me, I'm just saying be aware that your frontal lobe is not developed yet. Like, not even in a mean way, it's just like you are not even like anywhere near the level of level-headedness that you're going to be after it develops. So it's always blows my mind that like in American culture it's like the norm to like go out into the world and live on your own while you're like literally still a teenager. Blows my mind. I think especially as a girl, if you're living on your own as like an 18 or 19-year-old and you're in the workforce and you're being shown off into the world, I think it's so unpleasant and like dangerous, and you're exposed to a lot of predatory energies, and it's not cool. I think that women should be able to stay with their family as long as they want and as long as they need, as long as they feel comfortable. And there just shouldn't be this like societal structure of like leaving the house by 18. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, you're a freaking child basically, like teenager. Anyways, so I know this was like kind of a rambly video and it was all over the place, but I really am just sharing my thoughts and experiences of being a first generation American and the differences that I noticed, the plus sides, the downsides, and all in all, I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. I just think there's ways that are going to bring you closer to God, and then there's ways that are going to bring you closer to the shadowy elements of life. Anyways, sending you guys a lot of love.